One day I feel alright. The next I'm looking for the light, for the light, for the light.
Hello siblings, welcome to the first day of summer. It is May 1st of 2023. Here we are. Welcome, blessed be. Let's talk this midway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice because it's a fun one. If you are not familiar with the Sabbats in the Wheel of the Year, then I have a few recommendations for you to get familiar with them. Otherwise, if you are familiar, welcome back. If you're practicing, blessed Beltane, I'm so happy for you. And I hope you have a really wonderful summer ahead of you. Here's the resources for those of you that are not quite familiar with what I'm talking about. The first thing I recommend would be Wicca Wheel of the Year Magic, A Beginner's Guide to the Sabbats. This is by Lisa Chamberlain. This is not an all-extensive guide to the Wheel of the Year, but it is a wonderful little starting place. If you would like to just get familiar with the ideas, the general associations, a little bit of the history, this is a great starting place. I've referenced it many times. As you can see, there's sticky tabs on the outside, but within there's a lot of highlighting and scribbles and notes. Highly recommend. Not really recommended for anyone who is more advanced and has a grasp of the wheel. This is just a great starting point, in my opinion. Next, we have Beltane by Raven Grimassi. I could be saying that wrong and I apologize. Tell me you've only read certain words and not said them out loud before. That's what that is. But this one is really interesting. I read it today, actually. I had already read a few sections of it a few months ago. This is essentially a guide that's directly about this particular Sabbat. It's not very long. It looks a lot bigger than it is, I promise. This is great if you want to do a little more reading on this individual Sabbat versus just the quick summary that covers a lot more topics in this one book. This focused a lot on the history and lore around the world, different ways of practicing, and looking at this particular Sabbat. If you're interested in a deep dive into this particular one, this one's a really good option, and it's highly recommended for a reason. I found it to be pretty useful. I don't have the one for this specific summer Sabbat. I only have Ostara right now, which is the spring equinox. These little books that are the Sabbat essentials are really, really, really useful. I find that these cover so much information. Again, you should always, especially when talking about practices and culture and history, have multiple resources from multiple perspectives. But I found this one covered quite a bit of the basics, and it gets pretty in-depth for each one. Although, again, it is only one perspective, you should always do more reading than just one book and one reference. But I found that these are really well done and really well laid out. There's lots of recipes and rituals and all kinds of things that I found particularly useful for me. Once again, for me, I found a lot of stuff within these that I really agreed with, when sometimes I don't get very much from a specific book because the source just wasn't particularly aligned with my practice. So if you're looking for a great place to start in more in-depth looks into each individual Sabbat, highly recommend the Llewellyn Sabbat Essentials. I don't have the Beltane one quite yet, but I do have Ostra, and I'm gonna slowly collect these throughout the years. They're a little pricey and I can look at them online, so I just do that instead. but my library unfortunately doesn't have these. Highly recommend these if you're getting started. Now, we're gonna just talk a little bit, laid back, chill little video about what my first day of summer is looking like and what I'm doing for this Sabbath in particular this year. An important note about how I practice is if I'm busy, I don't. If I can't find the time to celebrate a Sabbath, an equinox, a solstice, whatever it is, I just don't. And I don't make it a big deal. If I skip one, I skip one. We don't always celebrate 4th of July. Sometimes we work on 4th of July. I'm a parent, so I'm not always available. I get really busy, and my life is really busy, especially as an American. We have a lot of hustle culture, and so sometimes it's just not reasonable, and it's not healthy to try to go all out on a holiday or a Sabbath or whatever it is. That's all to say that this year I may not be practicing as much for this particular Sabbath, which is kind of unfortunate. It's not my favorite Sabbath of the year, so I'm not too upset about it, obviously. But I am doing some things to live intentionally today. I'm doing the bare minimum for myself and what I consider enough practice. There should never be any guilt or gatekeeping around practice. If you don't have the time, you don't have the time. If someone's doing a certain thing on a certain day, it doesn't mean that you have to either. Climate change has changed the plans a little bit for the seasonal Sabbaths, as you may have noticed. It was snowing here at the spring equinox, so planting seeds was not a great idea, and I didn't have the time to do that. So instead, for Beltane, I planted some seeds. It is actually raining today, the day of May 1st. Not only did I plant morning glories this weekend, but I also last week put together the beginnings of our garden, which I think is, it sparks so much joy for me. I'll insert some clips in a minute here, but essentially I'm building a cinder block wall. It's only 1 cinder block tall, so less than a foot tall, all the way across our backyard, because the dirt in the back from the previous tenants has a lot of debris, and debris that we can't remove because it's very rocky back there. We just don't have the time or the money to fix it, and this is a rental, so we're not going to fix it. So we need to block that area off from the child, because that's obviously not safe if there's rusted nails and little teeny tiny shards of glass that we can't see from broken bottles. Not safe. I don't want to be digging in there either. So we're creating this little barrier with cinder blocks, and we're going to plant plants in the spaces in the cinder blocks, because if you've seen a cinder block, they have holes in the center. So we're putting little plants in there, specifically like herbs and flowers, things that don't need to get super deep into the ground because it's on cement and it's only, I think it's only like 8 inches deep. Anyways, all to say, we're building this wall, a barrier essentially, across the cement so it blocks everyone from the dirt and the rocks, specifically the 2-year-old. I wanted plants. I love cooking with fresh herbs. I love making my own teas, and I love taking care of plants. If we can keep these plants alive, I'm gonna be super happy. We went from 2 plants, which were succulents, to 12 plants over 1 week. I went a little crazy. I am a third of the way done with the cinder blocks. I can only get 10 at a time in my car, and they're extremely heavy, but it is so rewarding. I've had such a good time putting this garden together, and I highly recommend it if you have a little space in your yard or in a window. We got sage, basil, rosemary, lavender, we got pineapple sage, we have peppermint, everything you could think of. I tried to get it all. I didn't get time, unfortunately, but we'll get there. I still have a lot of wall to put together. That's a lot of holes for plants. That's about, there's going to be at least 60 holes for plants. I think it helps them grow to feel loved and given a name, and it helps me feel more connected to them. So I did do a poll on Instagram where everyone helped me name my plants. So thank you if you were part of that little Pragmastery crew, and thank you for dealing with all of the plant content over last week. I know not all of you are interested in plants, but it made me really happy. So thank you for voting. Thank you for suggesting names and going along with my shenanigans. As of today though, it is pouring rain. It's like a mist constantly, and that's really strange for the California desert. I'm not quite sure what the rest of the day is going to look like. Normally I would say, oh, we'll take the kid outside to play in the water and in the sun, but there is no sun and it's too cold for playing in the water. So we did take a walk this morning in her little raincoat and rain boots to stomp in the puddles, you know, connect with nature in a way that we can in this urban area. We'll have to figure out what to do today. I've made myself some raspberry leaf tea because I was reminded of that in this book. It reminded me about the benefits of raspberry leaf tea. Very fortunately for me, I am PMSing this last few days, which is excellent timing, except it's not. I'm totally kidding. Very not happy with that. So raspberry leaf tea seemed really appropriate today. So thank you to Raven Grimassi for reminding me to take care of myself, and I have resources. Maybe today I will do some baking. We'll see. I'm not really in the mood to do all the dishes after the baking, so maybe I'll make some iced tea and pancakes or something for the kiddo to play with. Other than that, I tidied up the house a little bit. I need to do some vacuuming and resetting our space, essentially. I like to do that every Sabbath, even if it's not relevant exactly to the themes. I think resetting our space every Sabbath is just kind of nice for the mind and the body and making the space feel fresh. Yesterday was the last day of the Aurelium Magical Readathon, and I didn't quite finish one of the books that I need to read for it. I'm super lenient. Go watch that video if you want to see what it's all about, but I have one more book to read. It's a graphic novel. It's about dragons, and I believe it takes place in a jungle, so that sounds really fun. I may spend some time this afternoon reading because that's what makes my soul happy. The key to practicing, in my opinion, is intention. You could do anything you want, but if you intend for it to be good for you, to be spiritual, it will be, because it's about you. Practicing is about you. And if your intention is that this walk is going to be special for this Sabbath because you paid attention to the trees and you thought about things that you've achieved over the last year, that's intentional, and that's practicing if it made you feel any kind of way. So this is your inspiration today, your reminder to go easy on yourself. If you don't practice sometimes, it does not mean you're not enough, and even the smallest pieces of intention throughout your day can make such a difference. So I'm gonna go intentionally drink this tea to fuel and balance my body. I'm going to tidy up our house because I care about my space and I want energy to be positive. I'm going to message my friend because she makes me happy. She's my yellow, if you know what I'm talking about. And I'm gonna read a book because that makes me feel alive. I may also do some journaling tonight. We will see. I do feel a little bit chaotic, and when I feel chaotic and like I have thoughts that I just can't get rid of, writing them down helps. So I am going to do some journaling tonight, hopefully. And that's my plan. That's it. I don't have any big plans for making a dinner like I normally do, or a dessert. Don't have any plans to go out or do any crafts because I don't feel like it. But I am going to intentionally do the things that I mentioned, and I'm gonna feel good about it. And talking about it like I'm gonna feel good about it really makes me feel good about it. Sometimes you can manifest it just by speaking about it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a really wonderful day, night, wherever you are and whatever you practice. Stay safe, siblings.